Syracuse boasts some of the greatest lacrosse players in lacrosse history. Guys like Gary and Paul Gait, the Powell brothers, Tom Marichek, Rick Beardsley, and many more. They're the winningest school in Division I lacrosse history. When you think of college lacrosse, you think of Syracuse. Well, for a while that was the case, but the past decade has been all but extraordinary for the Orange. Since their national championship in 2009, they've only been to one Final Four and haven't won a championship. And they've ended the past few seasons at historical lows for the program. Last year, they finished the season unranked for the first time since 1975, going 4-10 and not even making the playoffs. In 2021, Syracuse barely squeaked by with a winning season of 7-6, immediately losing in the first round of the tournament. Simply put, Syracuse in the 2010 and 2020 era so far has not been the same blue chip lacrosse team that we all know. Today, I want to explore why. Why is a team that's been a staple of lacrosse for 50 plus years performing so poorly in the past decade? Why hasn't Syracuse been able to break into the tournament and make deep runs into the playoffs? And what can Syracuse do to return to their former glory? I'm Jake with Lax Weekly, and this is the rise, the fall, and hopeful rise again of Syracuse lacrosse. Also, I'm building an exclusive community of lacrosse players who are trying to become great, and we already have over 300 lacrosse players on the waitlist. It's called Lax Now, and we'll have our own group chat, weekly film breakdowns, and live streams so you can become an elite lacrosse player. You can join the waitlist for Lax Now if you click the link in the description and put in your email. I'm excited to see you there. So to start figuring out why Syracuse has underperformed, let's look at the first area, recruiting. In the past 6 recruiting cycles from 2016 to 2021, Syracuse has had one singular high school lacrosse recruit in the Inside Lacrosse top 10 recruit rankings. While other rival ACC schools are consistently collecting top 10 recruits, Hughes has been left out to dry. For example, in 2018, the sole top 100 recruit going to Syracuse was Griffin Cook. Simply put, the Syracuse roster is not nearly as strong as it was a decade ago when pretty much any big time recruit wanted to go there. And this brings me to my next point, talent development. Once you get talent to a school, it's your job to develop it and make it even better. Unfortunately for Syracuse, I think this is an area that they lack in. Let's go back to my example of Griffin Cook, the sole top 100 recruit in 2018. Well, Griffin started out his freshman year strong in 2019, getting playing time in every game, and although he only shot 17% and had 8 points on the season, any freshman making a contribution is certainly a good start. But since that season, Cook's shooting percentage has dropped to a mere 15%, and he never had a season with more than 10 points. He certainly has the talent to be a great player, but to me, I think this is a perfect example of Syracuse lacrosse players not developing into elite players. Now, I also want to say that Cook's career has been hampered by injuries, so keep that in mind as well. Let's take another example, 2017, with a recruiting class featuring Tucker Dordevic, Brendan Curry, Owen Siebold, and Lucas Quinn. You probably know the names Tucker Dordevic and Brendan Curry. They went on to have excellent college lacrosse careers. But then look at the two names Owen Siebold and Lucas Quinn. Siebold was an Under Armour All-American coming out of high school and a very promising recruit. I even played against him in high school, and I could see how special he was even then. Well, unfortunately, Siebold never really found playing time until the end of his career. And when he did find playing time, he was a solid contributor, but he never became an elite offensive player in college lacrosse. Or what about Lucas Quinn, another promising high school recruit, ranked number 13 by Inside Lacrosse. In his 5 years at Syracuse, he never had a season over 15 points, but when you did watch him play, you saw the talent and potential to have that type of breakout season. To be honest, I don't think this is really any of the players' fault. I think it's the coach's job to take players and develop them and prepare them for the college game. I'd like to see Syracuse do a better job of developing their talent and have players keep improving throughout their college lacrosse careers. Now let's look at another reason for the struggles, the transfer portal. In the past few years, college lacrosse has been dominated by the transfer portal. Players who started at one program but then get scooped up by a new college and transfer there. Like look at the Maryland lacrosse team, for example. Just on their championship roster alone from 2022, they scooped up 3 players who were a major reason why they won. Jonathan Donville, Owen Murphy, and Keegan Kahn. Donville and Kahn are crushing it in the PLL, and Owen Murphy is now an elite attackman returning for even more success next year. Or look at a school like Duke. They've gotten guys like Michael Sowers or Sean Lowley from Penn, 2 excellent offensive recruits. Or Notre Dame this year, they just got Brian Tevlin and Chris Fake, 2 of the best lacrosse players on Yale. Or North Carolina, they landed Chris Gray. Long story short, other blue chip schools and ACC rivals have dominated the transfer portal, and Syracuse hasn't been up to par there. However, stay tuned for the end of this video because I think the tides might have turned around. Now let's look tactically at the Syracuse lacrosse team. What statistics can we find to show why they're underperforming? Well, first we have to start with the defense. Syracuse is bottom 7 in all of Division I lacrosse for the most goals given up in a lacrosse game. If that's the case, it doesn't doesn't matter how good your offense is, it's going to be very, very tough to win any games. Syracuse used to be a staple for great defenders, but recently they haven't been able to figure it out. If they want to return to the Syracuse Lacrosse we all know, they need to develop their defense and figure out a system that works. But I don't want to rag on just the defense. The offense hasn't been up to par either. Let's start with turnovers. Syracuse was top 7 in the country in turnovers per game last year. When you watch them, it was apparent that the offense had a hard time keeping the ball. They were making poor passing decisions or simply getting it checked away. When your defense is already struggling and now you're turning over the ball, that's a recipe for losing a game. The other statistic that I found interesting was shooting percentage. Last year, Syracuse shot at a 28% clip, while their opponent shot almost 10% better than them at 37%. But Syracuse outshot their opponents 661 to 556. That's more than 100 shots more than their opponents. So taking shots is not the problem for Syracuse. It's actually finishing them that's a major factor here. If they want to become an elite team, they need to take higher quality looks or simply become more skilled at finishing the ball. That goes back to my point on talent development. I think that's something the Syracuse coaches need to fix. But there is plenty of hope. I just rattled off a ton of reasons why Syracuse is struggling, but I think there might even be more reasons why Syracuse might be able to rise to the top. The first one is Joey Spallina. He enters Syracuse as the #1 lacrosse recruit in the class of 2022, and he's also slotted to wear the legendary number 22 for Syracuse. He finished his high school career breaking the record for the most points on Long Island with 501 career points, and now he enters the Syracuse team with a ridiculous amount of hype. What Syracuse has been missing the most on offense is a commander, a guy who can take charge of the game, beat his matchups, and score at will. Joey Spallina fits all of these characteristics and then some. He makes plays on the field that make your brain hurt, and he could not be a more perfect pairing for head coach Gary Gait. This leads me to my next point, Syracuse's coaching change. Now, Syracuse has known they've been struggling for the past decade, and finally after 2021, they parted ways with longtime head coach John Desko. Well, they went out and found two of the most sought-after coaches in all of D1 lacrosse, Gary Gait and Dave Pietramala. Gary Gait is arguably the greatest lacrosse player of all time, and after finding success with the women's lacrosse team, he's taken over the helm for the Syracuse men's team. His assistant is his former arch rival and longtime Johns Hopkins head coach Dave Pietramala. Dave is arguably the best defender of all time, and he's taken over as the leader of the Syracuse defense. On paper, Syracuse has all the tools they need from a coaching perspective to dominate the game. It was certainly a shaky start in 2022, going 4-10, but give the Orange a few years time, and I think that Gait and Pietramala have the tools to make something special. And next is the transfer portal. Like I mentioned earlier, 'Cuse has lost out on the transfer portal in years past, but this year I really like what they've done. They landed a pair of great attackmen in Alex Simmons from Denver and Cole Kirst from Lehigh. Simmons came off a 45-point year at Denver, and Kirst came off a 30-point year at Lehigh, and they certainly have the talent to get playing time on any D1 lacrosse roster. With Joey Spallina coming in, top recruit Owen Hiltz coming back from injury, and now adding in Simmons and Kirst, Syracuse lacrosse should have no shortage of offensive firepower. To me, college lacrosse is not the same without Syracuse being a dominant force. Many of us who grew up watching lacrosse grew up watching Syracuse, and I think it's about time they show us why they're the most winning D1 lacrosse school ever. With a generational recruit in Joey Spallina, a big coaching change, and a solid transfer portal, I think this could be the year Syracuse comes back. And I read every comment, so let me know what video you want to see next. I'm Jake with Lax Weekly. Go check out Lax now, and I hope you have a fantastic day.